Good afternoon. Thank you all for joining me. I'm Peter Elvidge. I look after media management at Globecast. At Globecast, we have the pleasure of working with many of the world's leading broadcasters to try and find solutions for playouts, media management, content delivery. And today I'm hoping to share with you two very much real-world examples where we've worked with some of our partners to deliver what we feel are very interesting solutions that I hope engage you and hopefully stimulate some questions. This is not intended to be a sales pitch in any way, so if it seems like it's heading in that direction, please feel free to pick up something hopefully soft and throw it at me. Not too hard. So the first one I'd like to start with is BBC Worldwide. So BBC Worldwide, we had the pleasure of working with them for many years, and this story really is about joint innovation. It's about two teams coming together and about an organisation that's prepared to step away from the status quo and find a very good, very efficient solution, improving their agility and saving quite a lot of money at the same time. Now, with the BBC at one end of the sort of scale spectrum from a broadcaster being pretty large, well established, we're going to balance that with a quick look at a much smaller broadcaster, Ride TV, so a startup organisation who had to get to air very quickly, and look at the kind of collaboration that was needed to make sure that they were successful. So I think probably the best way to start this is to look at the landscape that a lot of our customers and the wider broadcast industry finds itself living within today. And really, I think this is a story of our industry being set free. We no longer exist in a world where we have a guaranteed audience. We have new competitors. We have a massive amount of new technology and new possible ways of delivering content coming into our industry. So we're not really in a walled garden anymore like we maybe were in the past, and we don't really have guaranteed access to an audience. We really have to compete with it. And this really has led to quite a lot of fragmentation. So we can see that the intense competition that we face has brought players from outside our industry into it. And what was once in the olden days large audiences that we could address have become fragmented across lots of different technologies, people watching content when they want to, and people having very different propensities to pay for what they want to watch. So I think this is actually leading, it's driving a certain pace of change in our industry, with a very fickle audience, making it really hard to predict long-term revenues and requiring all people in our industry to really need to improve their agility to remain competitive. And I think it's also sort of making sure that nearly all organizations constantly have to do more with less, which is really leading to a real increase in the pressure on often what are very scarce resources in broadcasters. So looking at the engineering teams, the operational teams in most broadcasters and media industries today tend to be under a lot of pressure, which can lead to a bit of an agility crunch. They find that they haven't got time to look at new opportunities, and they end up having to just to sort of run the whole time just to keep their current business running. So, moving on then to our first real-world example. So, controversially, I'd actually quite like to start by giving you the answer, actually, telling you what the end result was, and then stepping back to see how we got there. So really, the answer is an organisation like BBC Worldwide, very good at being prepared to question everything, and very good at working collaboratively with a partner. And I think it's that collaborative element, which you'll see as we go on, is the reason why, as a project, it was possible to save so much and improve agility so much. So I think really the key message is the collaboration, and as an organisation being prepared to work with vendors as partners rather than as a simple supplier-vendor relationship. So who are BBC Worldwide, for those of you who may not know? So BBC Worldwide is the commercial arm of the UK's BBC. They exist to support the BBC public service mission and maximise profits on its behalf. They do this through investing in, commercialising and showcasing content from the BBC in and around the world. This content includes Doctor Who, Top Gear, Orphan Black, Call the Midwife and Sherlock. And as part of their mission, BBC Worldwide operates a range of branded channels covering everywhere from Latin America through Europe to Asia. Channels include BBC Brit, BBC First, BBC Earth and CBeebies. And BBC Worldwide's not an insignificant player with sales of over $1.4 billion. So before we get on to hear this from the BBC, just to give you a little bit of context of what the challenge was that was faced before we begun. So until 2015, BBC Worldwide was contracting with 3 different suppliers for media management and playout around the world, in the UK, in Singapore, and in the US. And this led to a little bit of fragmentation in the technology stack. So each of the providers had very different technologies, leading to very different content supply requirements. And all of these different providers had contracts that were entered into at different points in time as the businesses grew. So contractually things were a little bit difficult to untangle, not always well aligned. And this resulted in BBC Worldwide having really quite multiple parallel workflows that had to be managed to deliver content to all of these places. So it brought sort of a lack of agility and an increase in costs. It also meant that it wasn't really commercially feasible to cease a channel in one part of the world and then reuse that and relaunch a service somewhere else. So it was a little bit wasteful in terms of how it was working. The other key problem with the approach, before 2015, was a little bit of inflexibility. All the contracts had different pricing mechanisms, which meant it was pretty hard for the operational team at BBC Worldwide to support the business and easily predict what future costs might be. So hard to explore new opportunities. So I think in the end, the challenge really can be summarised in that it was one about streamlining and all aspects of content supply. So as is very often the case in our industry, this all started with an RFP process. So the RFP process from BBC was really looking for a new playout partner, and the structure of the RFP was initially looking for a partner to provide probably 3 separate operations around the world, one for Asia, one for Europe, and one for America. Now obviously Globecast, we have 3 centres around the world in these 3 locations, so it would have been very easy for us to go back and say, yep, we can do that, me too, we can answer that RFP. But after some modelling, we realised that if we could actually work together a bit more collaboratively and sort of innovate together, we could centralise that operation and bring a lot more agility and probably bring a fair cost saving as well. And that's really where the team at BBC Worldwide was so good, in that they were open-minded to that collaboration and shared with us the data we needed to be able to optimize their workflows and to be able to look at the value of centralizing and find a way to do that. During the process, I think it also became apparent that there was a kind of exploding demand for VOD content. So really looking at seeing an increase in the amount of challenge experienced around delivering a more and more complicated product, if you like. So giving all of their channel affiliates around the world a package of VOD content as well as the linear channels. And really the final piece of the overall puzzle was connectivity. So by centralizing all of the playout operation into one place in the world, we obviously had to get the feeds back to where the audiences were and manage all of that, manage the transition of all of that without any impact to the end viewers. So with that, I'd like to move on to a quick interview we managed to get with BBC Worldwide's Ben Blomfield, EVP Global Operations, and Mark Stanway, Head of Operations for Western Europe and SEMA. So they were kind enough to answer a few of our questions. I'm going to play the video back now. little bit more. I'm up. No?
Consume our content. Now that could be news, it could be our
That's
current affairs, it could be our drama and our entertainment, the amazing catalogue of material we have to play out globally. Now, so we have an amazing.
Excuse us 1 second. So it's coming out of your.
Now the VOD market's not new, but it's certainly an area that we are very much focused on and needing to work with a partner who understands the direct.
Here we go. Sorry about that.
I think if you look at the BBC's remit and BBC Worldwide's remit, we are looking to expand our viewership to 500 million kind of viewers. And that could be any form of viewing, and certainly channels falls into that bracket. People we engage with, be it on a daily, weekly, fairly regular basis, who consume our content. Now that could be
Anything?
It could be news, it could be our current affairs, it could be our drama and our entertainment, the amazing catalogue of material we have to play out globally. Now, so we have an amazing kind of armoury of material to work with, and we have some great new brands that we're looking to grow and develop. Now, in any marketplace at the moment, of course it's about growing and developing into new and emerging markets. Now, the VOD market's not new, but it's certainly an area that we are very much focused on and needing to work with a partner who understands the direction of travel. So yes, it's about technology, it's about understanding the marketplace, and it's about having a relationship that you can work with a partner to say, do you understand where we're going, and then really understanding that, translating what you're saying to them. Now that doesn't always happen with some partners. You can go into some kind of vendor relationships where it does feel very much like I would like you to do this. The response is, yes, I understand what you'd like, and we will do it. And sometimes there's a bit of lost in translation along the way. Now, working with Globecast, we've had some real benefits, some real successes in that we've been able to communicate what we want to do, and that's been listened upon, and we've been able to move forward. Some of the main benefits of the project were, to start off with, we are going into an incredibly ambitious cycle of channel relaunches. So we developed 3 new core brands that we really believed that we wanted to, that really represented the BBC's content on a global basis. BBC Earth, which is a well-known kind of brand in itself. Earth was known as was a brand, but really didn't have the oomph and kind of creative kind of power behind it that we were looking for. BBC Brit was really the best of British, as you can imagine. It's the Top Gear show, but it was more than just Top Gear. It was about what makes Britain great and what people look at Britain for. So it's that some of the elements of sarcasm and the kind of the Englishness you can get. And then finally, BBC First. Now, BBC First really about pushing out and ensuring our drama is out there, because we have an amazing drama slate. But what we had to do first was, first of all, develop those brands, but now how do we roll them out? So we went through an incredibly aggressive timeline working with Globecast to roll out, I believe it was 17 or 18 channels over a year, as well as launching into new markets. So that project in itself was about, first of all, we were consolidating from 3 playout partners into 1, which in itself is a lot of work and a lot of kind of tracking of material. And then secondly, it's about relaunching channels. But it wasn't just a case of taking one channel and swapping it out. It was actually changing some of our scheduling philosophy. What I mean by that is BBC First was all about getting the content from from a UK transmission, getting it out into market as fast as possible, in some instances day and date. Now, anybody who's kind of familiar with working with localization, we translate and work with 29, 30 different languages. So in some instances, now it's not always the case for particular shows, but we do a lot of localization, in the region of 23,000 hours of content localized on an annual basis. And so we are pushing a lot of material out there. So BBC First presented some really interesting challenges for us. We needed to accelerate the supply chain, accelerate the ingest and getting it through those final stages prior to getting out for TX. So that was a real success for us. First of all, consolidating to a single partner enables us to have one conversation, but then having a partner who understands the time pressures and is willing to flex and give a bit. One of the driving forces about consolidating and working with a new partner and choosing a partner who you believe is commercially savvy, is future facing, is that obviously you don't know what the future holds. So what you expect for them is to be able to be nimble, and you expect them to be agile, to listen to your requirements and listen to what you're trying to do as you evolve new business lines, and is capable of picking up the baton and going, I hear what you're saying, I can work with you and we can move forward. Yes, we can talk about cloud-based play out in an IP environment 5 years down the line when we're talking about we're doing it already. Well, sorry, we're not. It's being done in the marketplace with 1 or 2 channels. But in the future, you can imagine play out will change over time. Now, what it looks like now and what it looks like in the future is going to be different. What it looks like, you don't know. But you need to be working with a partner, at least to start off with, who is willing to go on a journey with you.
Essentially, media management was a byproduct of the need for playout. So without media management, you can't have playout. But once you've done that, there's an awful lot more you can do with the same content. You can transcode it, you can stream it to OTT platforms, you can offer it to VOD platforms.
BBC Worldwide's Ben Blomfield and Mark Stanway, so thank you very much to both of them for recording those videos for us. So what does it all mean? So after the project, looking back over the past couple of years, some numbers straight away. We can see that together to make it happen, we've moved over 5 petabytes of data. So this is moving data from existing playout providers, new content, migrating in, over 1 million media objects altogether to untangle and clean to get that ready for use. In the process of going through that, together we've technically fixed over 300 programs to avoid the potential for resupply and avoid the risk of those bits of content not making it to air. In the end, we managed to migrate over 24 channels over a 1-year period, with as many as 8 being done in one planned migration. So managing the migration of the playout and distribution at the same time in many cases, and doing that in a way which is seamless for the end audience, which is really something which we're very proud of, and very proud of how we've worked with BBC Worldwide to achieve that. I think a lot of the time we look at that, we see our team and the team from Worldwide working so closely together, it's pretty difficult to see who works for which company. At the same time, we managed to get 13 new VOD affiliates up and running in the first few months of operation, and we can see that together, looking back, overall we've managed to get together save 30% of the operation costs that BBC Worldwide would have faced had they operated their playout media supply chain for their business today on the technology they had before. So again, that's quite a significant saving. So from BBC Worldwide, I'd like now to move very quickly to Ride TV. Ride TV, a 24-hour all HD network we've enjoyed working with over the past few months. So Ride currently carried on Dish Channel 248 and a number of cable platforms. Ride was created by Michael Fletcher, who we'll hear from very shortly, Craig Morris and Tony Forge, a pretty experienced team who identified a really good niche opportunity to launch a channel about all things equine. And to give you a bit of a flavour of this channel and allow them to introduce themselves, I'm going to play you a little clip from their promo reel.
Pam Brown once wrote, A horse is the projection of people's dreams about themselves. Strong, powerful, beautiful. Winston Churchill once said, "No hour is wasted that's spent in the saddle."
At Ride TV, we believe the old British Bulldog made a pretty good point. Any time spent riding a horse or even watching a horse is time well spent.
Foodies have the Food Channel, golfers the Golf Channel, and finally, there's a channel dedicated to horse people everywhere.
Welcome to Ride, TV Unbridled.
So hopefully that gives you a little bit of flavour around what this channel is all about. And now the challenge for Ride TV as a very lean startup was to get to air and to get carriage quickly. And key to doing that was finding a partner they could work with and trust to deal with the technical details needed while they focused on getting their deals in place for carriage and so on. And the result we're actually very proud of. I mean, together we actually managed to get everything in place, all of the workflows up and running, all of the playout working, all of the master control, all the satellite delivery within 10 days of first meeting. So, you know, a very rapid onboarding process, leading to a very successful launch. So I asked Michael Fletcher a few questions around why he did it like this, and I'll play you his response.
So at Ride TV, the reason we decided to outsource our playout is it just was much more economical and practical for us. We had to launch our channel in a very, very short time frame because we signed some distribution agreements. And even though I've been in this business for a long time and I've actually owned playout and uplink facilities, I knew it made a much smarter choice to go ahead and outsource it to a professional company that could get us up and running very quickly. So that's what we decided to do. Another reason why we decided to outsource our playout is a very technology and equipment intensive business. It requires a lot of investment, a lot of constant upgrades, and a lot of very specialized personnel who can watch the distribution chain, make sure that everything's playing out on time, all the files are checked and that they're ready for air. And we felt like that it was a much better choice to go to a company that had that infrastructure and had a good history of doing it. I guess the third reason why we decided to outsource our playout is that building a 24/7 channel requires a tremendous amount of time and focus, and there's so much that you're focused on. Marketing, programming, everything else. And the last thing that we wanted to have to worry about was getting our channel played out and uplinked. So for us, it was a better use of our time. And again, as I stated before, it requires specialists. It requires a company or a team that you can count on, who's nimble, who has a lot of expertise. And we didn't want to have to go hire those people. So we went to Globecast, and honestly, we couldn't be happier.
So in summary with Ride TV, you know, all of the launch targets were met, and we ended up with two companies that really enjoyed doing work together and are actively seeking out opportunities to do more with each other. In fact, the CEO of Ride TV is looking forward to getting our managing director of Americas, Eddie Ferraro, on a horse, and which is something the rest of us are dying to see and capture on video for posterity. So, summing up at the end, so what kind of conclusions can we come to? And really what I was trying to get at right at the very beginning is, you know, as an industry, the sort of lid's been lifted on what we all do. You know, we're not in a walled garden anymore. We're free to play and compete with people that are coming from very different industries. But I think the key thing is about collaboration. You know, audiences are going to continue to fragment, that's for sure. But our industry is really good at making fantastic content, really good at understanding those audiences. And I think, you know, working, and it's really the key point in my argument is, that to flourish, we need to make the right partnerships. We need to each understand where each partner's core competences really lie, and together exploit those the best we can. I think we really need to work together to innovate, whether you're as big as BBC Worldwide or as small as a company like Ride TV. So very finally, a quick introduction to Globecast. We're a team of 750 people integrated into the broadcast ecosystem globally. We've got facilities, relationships in all major broadcast markets around the world. We work with our customers to really help them reach their audience, grow their business, and increase their profitability. And if you would like to come and talk to us, we'd love to talk to you, and we're based right next to this stand, just on my left. Any questions at all? Sorry, can you repeat that, please?
The BBC consolidation?
So the question was, did we use any new technology for the BBC migration? I would say absolutely yes. Most of it was around sort of workflow and a workflow orchestration, providing direct web portals to the teams at BBC and in some of their partners to try and improve the efficiency. That was probably the area where it was the most technology was brought to bear.
An ENPS system or something, some sort of collaboration software?
Collaboration, yes, but it was predominantly our own proprietary software. Yeah. Any more questions? Fantastic. Well, thank you very much for joining me. And if you do have anything else, I'll be hanging around over here on our stand for the next few hours. Thank you very much.